Welcome to Plast-aid. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate fixing a leak in a PVC pipe. This can be used for irrigation, hot tubs, plumbing. What I'm going to do is take the hacksaw and saw a cut through part of the pipe to demonstrate where that might be a leaking part or a crack or a bad glue joint. We're going to take about 25 minutes in this video, and we'll go from start to finish to where we've actually tested this to about 500 psi within that 25-minute time frame. First thing I'm going to do is to clean the site with some Plast-aid liquid, putting a few drops of the liquid on the corner of the paper towel. I'm wiping over the pipe which will clean it and will prime it. It doesn't really soften this like a PVC primer would be, but it does do a great job of cleaning and priming or activating the surface. Next, we'll mix our Plast-aid, put some liquid in the cup, add the powder. We're always going to be mixing this so that it's very drippy or soupy or liquidy at the beginning. Kind of test it out. Ideal ratio is approximately 2 parts powder to 1 part liquid by volume. So if you used like a teaspoon or some mixing spoons to get a good idea of what that would be approximately 2 to 1. Okay, notice that almost immediately after mixing it, while it's still liquidy, we're putting a coat on. What's happened is that the liquid dissolves the powder, and the chemicals that are in the powder, the catalysts that are in the powder that cause the liquid to harden, are released. And what happens is that the liquid molecules begin to attach themselves to each other like a link in a chain. And we want to be sure that while it's very liquidy or soupy, that takes place on the surface of the part. If we wait until it's more like a dough or a putty and apply it, well, most of the liquid is already chemically satisfied. And so to assure that we've got a good bond, we're putting this on very wet and drippy and soupy, even if most of it drips off. Now in this case, it's, if I wasn't rotating it, and it was just sitting stationary, what would happen is much of that would just drip off. But that's okay. We want to apply a coating that is very wet. And then as it thickens, we'll go ahead and build it up so it gets kind of creamy like wood glue, and then kind of like toothpaste. So this is kind of in between. I'd characterize this here at about a little after 3 minutes, that it's kind of between a wood glue stage and a toothpaste stage, but it's still really wet, and that's critically important to get a good bond. Now in this case, we've cut with the saw a cut. We didn't go all the way through, but we are going all the way around the pipe. This is also helpful that if you've got a glue joint that's gone bad, it may be leaking at one point but coming out at a different spot. So it's helpful to put it all the way around. Okay, here we are after 4 minutes. It's thickened up enough to where I can touch it without it's not really, really sticky. Just patting it in place to be sure that it's kind of evenly distributed. The thicker part that we just put on is sitting on top of that wet layer. The wet layer having already established a bond to the PVC and to the surface of the PVC, and the additional layers establishing themselves on top of that to give it some thickness, which gives it strength. Okay, coming up, here we are at about 5 minutes. And now it's kind of like a dough or a putty, maybe even a clay, and lightly touching it to just feather it out and put it in place, kind of evening it out. Now, obviously, if this were a pipe that was stationary, you wouldn't be able to rotate it like this. So the advantage of being able to rotate is we're going to be able to generate a nice smooth finish on this. Oftentimes, like say under a hot tub or in the wall of a building, you can't do this. And that's okay. It'll still work. Okay, see at 6 minutes, we're kind of finishing up on having it mixed it, put on that first wet drippy coating, building it up, and now smoothing it out. What I'd done prior to the video was mix it to make this little pipe sample, about 6 to 8 inches of the pipe, and put gluing on the caps with first the PVC primer and then the glue, and let it set for several days to be sure that it hardened adequately. And drilled, the caps have threaded pipe threads, 1/8-inch pipe threads on each end to accept a fitting for a hose for being able to pump it up. So what we'll do shortly is to fill this with water, add the pump and fill this with water, and then put a cap or a plug on the opposite side after we've got the water all out. Okay, here already at 7 minutes, this is beginning to finish to the extent to where we can, it's hard enough to where we can start getting ready to test this. This pump is a hydraulic pump that can go to 10,000 psi. The gauge on there goes to 600 psi, so we're not going to take this past the 600 mark. It's normally use hydraulic oil in this pump, but we're just going to put water. So we're going to start filling the pipe with water. It hasn't cured completely yet, but it certainly is cured enough to where we can do this. Okay, so we'll top up the pump with water and start filling it. The way this pump works, there's a little knob. You see me fooling with that here shortly, where we'll open that up so that it'll allow the water to go into it. Okay, we're at about 9 minutes. Cleaning off the stick and the mixed cup. So obviously this hasn't cured completely yet, since we're able to kind of crumble it off the mixed stick. Okay, looks like some water got in. Water started filling the pipe and coming out of a hole in the top. here to 10 minutes, filling it, checking the hardness of the Plast-aid. Okay, right there is the knob at about 10:15. It's black, so you can't really see it, but it's sort of a thumb screw knob that closes the valve, which allows the pump to start pressurizing. When you open up the valve, it releases the pressure. So in this case, the pump is now pumping. A little bit of water at a time, filling up the pipe. There's almost no pressure on it at this point, other than what it takes to fill the pipe. Okay, I can see that it's using some water, so we're refilling the reservoir of the pump. What we don't want to do is get any air into the system so that it doesn't compress the air and cause a potential hazard with these pressures and high forces that we're dealing with. The hose and the plug that's going to be on the other end is a 1/8 inch NPT for National Pipe Thread, so it's a tapered thread. And so the idea is as you tighten it into the hole, it's tapered like a cone so that it seals. I haven't put any Teflon tape or any sealant on there. We're just going to do it without that sealant, and then they'll end up leaking a little bit, but that's okay. We'll be able to see it get pressurized. "13 minutes. See the water's coming out of the top of the pipe. We've about got it filled. We'll have it kind of stand up so that we'll fill it all the way, trying to get most of the air out. And now putting a little tapered plug in there to seal the top. We're trying to be careful to be sure that the threads get lined up so that they don't cross thread. And then just tighten them up with an Allen wrench. Didn't have to put a lot of torque on that to get it to tighten. Here we are at about 14.5 minutes or so, and checking the hardness of Plast-aid. Just kind of seeing if it's how firm it is, seeing if it's done. 15 minutes, checking out how the Plast-aid is in the mix cup. It's cured and hard and easily pops out of the cup. Now, the reason it pops out of the cup is because the cup is made out of polyethylene, and it's a different family of plastics with Plast-aid. And Plast-aid doesn't stick to polyethylene or polypropylene. It may stick a little bit. The real important issue is that it'll chemically fuse or polymerize to the surface where the molecules will attach themselves to each other. In the case of PVC, that occurs. In the case of the polyethylene, the molecules are such that they don't get recognized at all. And therefore they don't bond, or they don't stick, or they don't chemically fuse. Okay, wiping up some of the water. Okay, a good way to test the hardness of Plast-aid is whether or not you can stick your fingernail in it. And another way is that Plast-aid generates heat as it cures, and especially at the latter stages, it gets warm to the touch. When we can tell Plast-aid the reaction is over with because it will have cooled down. You can tell this especially if you've got enough mass for the heat to build up. If you're putting it on very thin, or you don't have a whole lot to deal with, there's not a lot of heat that gets generated, so you can't tell that it gets hot. In this case, there's plenty of Plast-aid here to where you can feel it get warm. Now we're kind of at a place trying to decide whether or not to go ahead and wait any longer or pressurize it up at about 18.5 minutes. Here again at 19, it's just trying to make a decision whether or not we can go ahead and start. If you have a little more time, you might just let it rest and harden, continue to harden, and making sure that it's plenty hardened enough. In our case here, in making the video, we decided, well, let's see how much we can push this and start to pressurize it. Okay, just killing time a little bit more, getting the last of the Plast-aid out of the mix cup. Fixing a leak in PVC pipe is going to occur when, let's say it was a lawn system and a truck ran over a pipe that was in the ditch and a little rock penetrated it, and Plast-aid could be easily used to go over that rock. If it's a bad glue joint, putting Plast-aid over like this will fix that leak. If it's a flex hose, we have a video about the same sort of thing with the flex hose. But in the case of the flex hose, we will use a file to file down, or sandpaper to file down the outside rubber part to get it where it was shiny. Now it'll be a kind of a matte finish, and then we'll apply the Plast-aid over that matte finish area rather than on the shiny part. And we'll explain that in detail on the video that shows the flex hose going into a fitting of SART. Okay, 21 minutes, 40 some seconds. We've tightened the knob back up, ready to start pressurizing this thing. I've gone to grab some safety glasses in the event that we're dealing with higher pressures and it could possibly fail. But given that there's no air in there, or a minimum amount of air, we'll minimize the risk because the air is not going to compress. Since there's air not there, it's not compressing. Okay, 22 minutes, 20 some seconds, we start pressurizing this up. We're at 200 psi now. The pipe is rated at 450 psi. We won't take it up any more than the 600 psi. In fact, we're seeing it's starting to drip a little bit from the fittings. It's not from the Plast-aid area, it's from the plug on the end and the hose fitting there. Just tightening up a little bit more to get a little better seal. See, this is just a little bit past finger tight to tighten these up. The gauge shows 0 to 600 psi. We've pushed it up to 200. You see it drip. We see the pressure dropping a little bit. There's clearly leaks in the system to allow it to drop. So the leaks could be at the hose end, where my left hand is, or it could be at the plug end. In fact, it is dripping a little bit at the plug end, and a few drops are coming out. It could also be inside the pump itself, where the knob is turned closed. There may be some leaking occurring right at that valve. Taking a close-up, you get an idea of that leak, showing that the leak is not from the Plast-aid area, it's from the fitting, the plug. Now, normally the pressures that are seen in PVC pipe are residential or commercial pressures in the 60 psi range. Clearly, here we are over 400 psi, pushing the pressure up close to 500 psi. See, we're seeing it drip there again from the plug. That's where we're getting the pressure loss as it's leaking. but it's not happening there at the Plast-aid joint. So there we are, within 25 minutes from start to finish, where we took the hacksaw and cut through to show a leaking joint, to where we've actually tested it now over to 500 psi. It's pretty amazing. Be sure to see our other videos using Plast-aid for mechanical bond as well as a chemical bond. Thanks for watching.